What's up, guys? ArtistVersion1 here, and welcome back to another edition of Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. If you don't know by now, well, of course, I wrote a little book about 4 years ago, and upon numerous attempts of trying to write a follow up, I just couldn't find the focus to do it. And so I figured, why not take those stories that I was going to use for a book and just verbalize them, put them into a podcast. And that's what I do here on Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. And sometimes I bring on guests and let them tell the stories that you didn't ask for. Hence last week's episode when Jamie was on. Uh, in this week's episode, I'll admit I'm kind of digging here, but I think it's going to be pretty good. But before we talk about that, we got to give a great shout out to the people over at MoviesRUSA.biz, great sponsors of Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. And if you head on over to their website, you're going to find hard to find TV shows and hard to find movies that have either never been released on DVD or Blu-ray or haven't been released on DVD and Blu-ray in quite a long time. And if you head on over there and use my checkout code, that being artist, ARTIST at checkout, you will save 50. That's right, 50% on your purchase. And on top of all that, you're going to get free first class shipping as well. And for the very few international listeners we have, if you hear this and you're like, hey, I want to get some stuff too, you can. And you're also going to get free first class international shipping as well. I mean, go look at, Walmart, Target, Best Buy. We all know about Best Buy now. I mean, look at the physical media out there dying that slow, miserable death, but MoviesRUSA.biz is a website that's letting you get your hands on that physical copy of that movie and always let you have a backup of it in case your favorite digital streaming service just for some reason just gets rid of it or just for some reason has to shut down for whatever reason. So head on over to MoviesRUSA.biz today. Use that checkout code ARTIST, ARTIST at checkout and save you 50%. And they have over 3,500 titles to choose from. And if you look through all 3,500, you're like, hey, they don't have what I want. That's impossible. But if for some reason that is possible, hey, email him, say, hey, I'm looking for this. He's more than happy to look it up, see if he can get that on disc for you. And you can still use that checkout code, still get the free first class shipping, and get it in your hands. So head on over to MoviesRUSA.biz today. All right, so I figured for this episode here, I would talk about probably two of the worst jobs that I probably ever had. And, I've had some jobs and, I've worked retail. I mainly worked retail my whole life before switching over into the food industry. I switched into the food industry because, it was either that or nothing, you know what I mean? But for the longest time, I was in, the retail industry. But at one time, I actually worked for a company that Jax actually worked for, my friend Jackie. And I used to meet her at the mall, and she would work at this company called Tivana. And it was a place that sold tea. I wasn't really into tea or anything like that. But, I knew she worked there and like, whatever. So I'm living in Illinois. And I'm trying to find a job and everything, and the job market was not that good at the time. But I kept getting these fucking holiday seasonal gigs. You know what I mean? So I went for a job interview at, Crocs. Yes, Crocs, the shoes and everything. And I thought I had a pretty good interview with the lady and everything. I thought I had pretty good, but I never heard anything from her. So I'm putting in applications just basically everywhere at the mall, one of the applications I put in was Tivana. I really did not expect Tivana to call me. It was just one of those things where like, hey, put it in. If they call, they call. If they don't, they don't. Some jobs you call and you're just like, hey, can I check my application? Some of them you're just like, they call, they call. And that was one of them. I was like, if they call me, then hey, fucking, we'll figure it out then. We'll talk turkey. And lo and behold, they called. They're like, hey, can you come in for an interview at this time and everything? I was like, cool. And the lady's name was Danielle. So I come in and I'm like, hi, I'm here for an interview. And they're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, give me just a moment and we'll have that interview and everything. Here, why don't you pick out a tea to have? Now, mind you, I don't drink tea. And Jax is like the expert on tea, somewhat. And the one tea that I ever heard her talk about was this spearmint tea that Tivana had. So I'm just like, all right, just ask for spearmint and just play along with what's going on here, because I don't drink tea. I'm more of a fucking Diet Coke guy, But I wanted the job, so I was like, oh, spearmint, please. Trying to act like I know what the fuck I was talking about. Actually, I had no fucking idea. And she was like, "Oh, well, we actually don't have spearmint, but we have this right here, and it has this and orange peels and bits of this, and it has a little bit of spearmint in there. Here, smell this." And I took a smell of it. I'm like, "Yeah, that's great, awesome." It could have been fucking dog shit with oranges in it for all I know, and I probably would have said yes. So she whips up this tea, and she's like, "All right, let's go sit outside and talk." I was like, "Cool." So we go outside and sit. Now she brews me like the fuck you size cup of tea, and I'm just like, man, you know. So I'm out there like sipping this tea. Oh, I hit the mic, sorry. I'm out there sipping this tea, and I want you to know, like during the course of this interview, I took like 50 sips of this tea, and I can guarantee that 4 of them were probably real. Cause like I just wanted to make it look like I was like, yeah, this is delicious, So we do the interview, and at the end, she was like, "How was the tea?" I was like, "Fantastic." Fucking, I took 4 sips of it, and it really wasn't that good. Spoiler alert, working there, I did actually find some teas that I liked, but not enough to be like, "Oh, let me keep drinking this shit daily." So like once I get out of eyeshot of that fucking store, I throw the tea in the fucking trash can because I was like, "Ugh, whatever." So lo and behold, a few days later, man, I get a phone call from her like, "Hey, we'd like to have you aboard for the seasonal season and everything." I'm like, "All right, cool, awesome." And I'm like, "Shit, I'm working for Tivana." So I messaged Jax and I was like, "Guess where I got a job at?" And she was like, "Where?" I was like, "Tivana." And the first thing out of her mouth, like no hesitation, no, like, "Hey, congrats on that, man." Like, "Hey, good job." And then the first thing out of her fucking mouth was, "You're gonna hate it." And I was like, "What? Why?" She was like, I just don't see you fucking liking it." And I was just like, and like, again, people see me and my mannerisms and everything like that. And like, if even to this day, people who remember Tivana, when I say like, I used to work at Tivana, that just throws them for a loop. Like you used to work at Tivana. I'm like, yeah, I know, right? Because like I do not mix with the people who work there, the kind of people who work there, the kind of people who shop there. It was a whole new ball game for me, man. So my first day comes, and they're showing me like the different stations. Now let me preference this by saying like this story that I'm telling is the story that pretty much killed um my second book, which was originally titled Retail Hell and the Fire from the Other Side of the Counter, because I was writing this exact story and I got stuck and I didn't know where to go and how to write it and everything. So hopefully verbalizing it would be better. So just keep that in mind here. So um first day they're showing me all the stations that they have, because it's almost kind of like working in a line at like in a restaurant. We're like, okay, you work this one station. If they don't want anything here, then you're gonna walk to this station with them, and then you're gonna pass them off to this person, and then you're gonna go back to there. It's kind of weird, you know. So the first station was always a cast iron, because we did what they call in the business top down sell. For those of you who don't know what top down sell is, top down sell means you start at the most expensive product you can possibly get to. Okay, and if they don't want that, you go to the next one. You don't want that, you go to the next, and all the way down to like the cheapest fucking thing imaginable. And the way the store was set up was that you started at the most expensive, then you went to the next section, which was the next expensive, and so forth, all the way down to like the cheapest fucking shit we had in the store. So that's how we did the top down sell. And like I was usually on greetings, which was like at the door. Like you just stood at the door and just like waited for people to walk by. And was like, "Would you like to try tea today?" And that's it. And then they'd stop and try it, and you tell them what's in it. Like, "Oh, this is the white Helvetic chai, and it has red pepper and shit in it." And 9 times out of 10, you're saying this shit, and they're just stopping just to just to get free tea. They don't give a shit. And that got annoying after a while. I got tired of like trying to sell the shit to like people who are just like, "Oh, I'm just trying to sample." You know, like, I'm just coming in to try to samples. And fucking, why are you wasting my time? Why am I doing the fucking little song and dance and everything? But then I have to do the song and dance, otherwise my fucking boss gets pissed. You know, anyway. So, the next station, no, so the first station was um, cast iron steel, or cast iron, I mean. Then we had porcelain and shit like that. Then it was the glass. Then finally it was like the self steeping teas and shit like that, you know, tumblers and everything like that. Then finally the register and everything. So I'm looking at this, and then they hand me this big fucking book. And they're like, this is the employee handbook. This thing was the size of a fucking textbook. Like, if you were to go to, like, fucking school and everything, like, this is the size of a fucking textbook. All it needed to be was, like, hardcover. And it would have been a fucking textbook. You know? And I remember distinctly when she handed me this textbook, or the handbook, I should say. She was like, okay, here's your handbook and everything that you can look through and everything. I just want you to know that anything in there that relates to cancer curing benefits, ignore that, because we're now a publicly traded company and we're not allowed to say that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, all right, I guess. Because they were private traded, and then they finally were bought by Starbucks at the time. And so apparently they haven't updated um, their handbook yet. Now, I'm like, you know, like, I didn't bring any sodas with me or anything like that, like I tend to do, because, like, I'm trying to be, like, down with the cause and shit like that. I don't want, you know, so I don't know what I drank that day. I can't remember, but I know I was just like, all right, just don't bring any sodas. I figured it was like contraband, you know, like, don't bring any sodas in here. They show me the back room where everything is, everything that pretty simple first day. Now the first week, you know, I'm getting my feet wet and everything. They're testing me out on stations, greeting, cast iron. I got pretty comfortable on cast iron, man. Like, to this day, man, I can tell you about monkey picked oolong like all day long, man. You know, oh, this is monkey picked oolong tea, man. You know why it's called that? Because they didn't have the tools to climb the trees and get the tea, so they trained the monkeys to do, you know, shit like that. You know, oh, the monkey picked oolong tea, it has no flavor. You can put this tea in anything and get all the benefits. You know, like, I was on that station so fucking much and never sold a fucking item off of there. You know, because, like, even though we got paid like an hourly, we also worked on commission. And that was one of the things I was told when we were hired was, like, you know, Will, at some stores, you know, you basically have to hold hands with your customers to make sure you get your commission sales. We don't do that here. You know, you're going to get your commission sales regardless, you know. If it's your customer, it's your sale, you know. So keep that in mind for later. So I'm trying, man. Like, I'm actually trying, because, like, I'm the type of person that, like, I may not know shit about whatever it is, but if you show me how to sell it, I'll figure out a way to sell it. You know, and that's what it was with this tea. I'm like, you're showing me, like, you're telling me what it is. Oh, monkey picked oolong. That's why it's called that. Shit, I'll work that in, man. You know, I'll tell you about monkey picked oolong all day. You know, if you're gonna buy some and everything. You know, I sold more tea than I probably did fucking products in that store. You know, um, greeting I was pretty fairly good at. I mean, that wasn't that hard. Just had to wait for people to walk by. Would you like to try tea? No, fuck off. Okay, cool, awesome. There was the glass station, which that always had like a tea in there. It was what was it? The peach mama taro. That's what it was, and like it was set up in a station where um uh it was a tea blossom where, like, if you put it in a glass jar, you could actually see the tea blossom while also get like the flavor and everything. I wasn't on that station that much, you know, but it was rare that I was on that station. And then finally there was a cashier, which I tried so hard to just be the cashier, and they just would not fucking just let me be the cashier. You know, I'm just like, man, I could cashier all fucking day, man. Just let me do this, man. Because I already had the register figured out and everything. I was like, just let me do this, man. You know, and then we had barista, which I didn't do that one too often. I was not fairly good at it, you know. But I was like, just let me do the register, man. I can do this shit. But no, you know, they're just like, oh no, you got to work on the sales floor. Well, you got to get your commission sales and everything. Which, oh my god. So after about the first week, one of the managers, I think her name was Lane, right? Yeah, I think her name was Lane. She was like, "Oh, Will, I need to talk to you." I was like, "Oh, done fucked up." I ain't hitting them numbers they want and everything. They're gonna get rid of my ass already. We're only a week into the season and shit. Because I think I started like a week after Thanksgiving or some shit. Um, she takes me to the back and she was like, "Danielle wanted me to give you this," and it was like a T-ball, and she was like, and she opened like this tote of like tea that like we weren't selling, and she was like, "You can pick out any tea in here because Danielle and we noticed that you're actually out there trying everything. You're not selling a lot, but we see that you're trying and everything, so we just wanted to reward your work and everything. So here's a tea steeper, and pick out any tea you like in this box here. You're doing a great job. Just you're trying. I was like, oh well, thanks. I appreciate that and everything. I thought that was nice of them and everything. That was probably the last time somebody was nice to me at that fucking place, because it just starts to go fucking downhill after that. Because I start to get to know people there and everything, and we share things with each other. Like they knew about my battle with depression and shit like that, and you start to know certain things about them. And one thing that kept bugging the shit out of me, like I didn't understand why we had a schedule. And the reason why I was like, why do we have a schedule, is because like every week I'd work like 4 or 5 days, something like that. And every day they were like, okay, well, I told them like opening was best for me because I can catch the bus at a decent time and everything. And they're like, okay, we can work with that. I was like, if you need me to close, I can close. But like opening would be best. And they said, okay, that's cool. Like I had to close a couple times, but I would never make it to closing for this reason. And the reason would be like, literally, they'd be like, okay, well, you're going to work 9 a.m. to 3. Cool. I can be here at 9. Awesome. And then like literally around like 11:30 or noon, hey, Will, why don't you go ahead and go home? Why? What am I doing? They're like, no, it's just not busy and everything, and you can go ahead and go home. So like 1 or 2 times I can understand, but like it became like an everyday fucking thing. To where I'm just like, do you just want to start scheduling me 9 to 12? Like, wouldn't that just be fucking easier at this point? Or like even the days where like they'd have me like 11 to 6, or 11 or like 12 to 7 or something like that, at around the fucking like 4:30 mark. Hey, Will, why don't you go ahead and go home? Why? Like, oh, Will, we're not busy. We don't need you here. Da, 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 da. I'm like, again, why'd you even fucking schedule me? Like, it was just I can understand doing it once in a while. Like, okay, Will, we're fucking dead. Just, we don't need you here. Go home. But like, when it's an everyday fucking thing, it becomes an annoyance. And then they kept hanging shit over my head. They're like, well, Will, if you go home early, we had a coworker named Sarah. Sarah here can give you a ride home so you don't have to take the bus. And I was just like, y'all act like that's a fucking incentive for me to leave and shit. But like, really, y'all are just making me even more mad. You know, that was just fucking, oh my God. Like, I think one day, like, I told them, I was just like, I'll come in if y'all guarantee that, like, I'm not going to be sent home. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, fine. So I come in and I'm at the glass station, and I'm standing there and I hear like whispers behind me and shit, you know? And I was like, that better not be what I think it is, man. All of a sudden I hear Will, and I turn around and I was like, yes. And they're just like, Will, would you mind going home early today? And I was just like, why? And they're just like, well, it's kind of slow and we don't need too many people here in the store right now. And I was just like, okay. And I just fucking left. Because I was just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. You know? Now, this is why I just became fucking unliked. And I will say partly it was due to my fault, but I also feel like I was justified as well. And that is, there was a night where I was closing. I was actually staying till closing. I was like, holy shit, right? And I was actually running cashier and doing floor sales on top of all that. So I'm working over this guy on the floor. And, he's at the cheapest bastard station, the cheap bastard station. So I'm like, man, you get this right here. You put it on top of your cup, and the steep of the tea comes into the cup, and boom, you're done and everything. He's like, I'll take one. I'm like, awesome. And he's like, what about this? I'm like, oh, that's a tea tumbler, man. It has a steeper right on top and everything. You put that, boom. And he's like, I don't know about that. I'm like, that's okay. Look what else we got. So I'm selling him like 4 different things, and he's still torn on this tumbler, you know? And I think the tumbler was like $37.95 at the time or some shit. And I was like, "You sure, man? You put the tea on top, everything like that. You know, you do this and do that." Da, 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 da. Now, meanwhile, I've been working this customer for like 45 minutes. You know, in between cashiering and shit like that. So finally, my boss Danielle walks over to him, and she's like chit chatting with him and shit like that. All of a sudden, she comes up with the tumbler and says, "Oh, this is for that gentleman right there." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so we got it." And she was like, and, "Now, when you to do the commission sales on a register, next to the register were little barcodes. So, like, okay, if somebody came up and said, 'Oh, I bought this from Will,' then they'd scan my barcode next to the register, so that lets the computer know, okay, these sales go to Will." You know, so she comes up, as I'm like, scanning this guy's stuff, and she's like, "Okay, and make sure this goes to me." Now, what I did next, I will admit to this day that I probably shouldn't have did. Okay, I should have waited for this guy to leave. I should have like pulled her aside, but I didn't. You know, but she was standing right to my left. And I kind of whispered to her. I was like, well, "Why should that go to you?" I didn't say it like in a facetious way, but I was just like, like, "Why should that go to you? I've been working with that guy for 45 minutes." And she was like, "Well, because he finally bought the tumbler and I was the one talking to him." I was like, "Yeah, but it was my customer." And then she was like, "Well, okay, fine. You take it then." I was like, "No, that's quite all right." And like, I gave her the credit for it. In fact, I gave her the credit for the whole fucking sale because I'm petty bitch like that. You know? And that was that. You know? And I kind of like told one of the managers what happened. And I was just like, "Listen, I was told that this shit wouldn't happen here when I was hired." I was told that, like, okay, you have to hold hands with other customers at other store. Here, that doesn't happen. And now here she is doing the exact same thing that I was told wasn't going to happen. And they're like, "Well, will that, that happens sometimes." And I was just like, "Okay." So I was tasked with mopping the floor. So I just went back to mopping the floor. I was like, "Whatever, I'm fucking over it. Mopping, mopping, mopping. So we leave. Next day comes, and one of the guys who wasn't there the night before, I'm kind of like just, one of those things where like, "Oh, fuck, you're not going to believe what happened last night." He's like, "What happened?" I was like, "Fuck, check this out." So I start telling him what happened. And one of the girls who was there last night starts walking up. Now, I didn't want her to hear that I was like rehashing this and shit. So like I kind of like did like the throat cut thing to the guy I was talking to and just stopped. And he was just, and then once she walked up, he was like, "Why'd you stop?" I was like, "What the fuck, dude?" So I was just like, "No, I just don't," and thinking like, okay, if I just say like a sentence, where they like, where he kind of gets what I'm saying, then she won't question it. So I was just like, well, I just don't want people thinking I'm just fucking, rehashing this whole thing and everything. And he was like, "Oh, okay." But then, boom, she jumped in, the lane girl, the one that was like, "Hey, great job, you're trying and everything." Um, she was just like, "Well, Will, if you're sitting here talking about it, then obviously, I forgot her wording, but like, she kind of snapped at me about it. Let's just put it like that." And like, I didn't react to it because we're on the sales floor. So anybody that knows me knows I'm the type of person that like, you can say shit to, and I probably, 9 times out of 10, I probably won't react to it, but like I'll let that shit stew. Like I'll let it fucking simmer and everything. Then after a while, I'm just like, "Wait a minute, what the fuck did they say?" And this is one of those times where like, I'm just like, "Man, did she fucking snap at me like that and shit?" But then I thought about it and everything, and maybe I did kind of come off the wrong way, and everything. So I was like, "You know what? For once in my life, I'm gonna be the bigger person and go apologize." Now, this is the second time in my life that like I've had this fucking revelation. Side note: I once had a mutual friend, Lisa, with Jackie, and apparently I said some things that Lisa did not appreciate. So I once went to Lisa, and I was just like, "Hey, Lisa, I just want you to know that like, if I offended you in any way, I just want you to know I apologize. I don't want there to be any bad blood between us or anything like that." And she was just like, "Well, I don't need your apology." And I was like, "Wow, okay, I become the bigger person here, and that's the answer." And that's about to happen here again, pretty much. So I mean, so if anybody's ever curious, like, how come Will never is the bigger person? This is exactly why. You know, so I get a minute with her in the back room. Her name's Lane, and I was like, "Hey, Lane, can I talk to you for a second?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Lane, I just wanted to, tell you, listen, about what happened earlier. If I offended you." In some way by bringing up that story from last night again. Listen, I apologize and everything. I didn't mean to still be harping on it and everything. I was just kind of like telling dude what happened and everything. And then she kind of like nods for a second. And then she was just like, "Listen, Will, I get it. Like, I think you said you have depression or something, bipolar." I was like, "Depression, yeah." And she was like, "I get it, Will, but like, maybe this job just isn't for everybody and everything. If you don't understand the job, then maybe, you deserve the struggle and everything." And I was just like, "What the fuck did she just say to me?" You know? She was like, "This job just isn't for everybody, so if you don't understand it, you deserve the struggle and everything. I'm like, this is like the weirdest fucking apology I've ever fucking given. You know, like this is why I'm not the bigger person sometimes. I can't tell you how many times in my life that I've gone to somebody and just I can count on like one hand how many times I've gone to somebody and say, "Hey, fucking, I'm sorry," and I get like the fucking most bullshit fucking response back. I can think of three offhand. There was the one in the Greece incident. There was one, the Lisa incident, and this one right here. So if people are ever wondering, like, "Will, how come you don't be the bigger person and go apologize?" This is exactly fucking why. Because when I am the bigger person and I go apologize for fucking shit, I get responses like this. You know? So she walks away and I'm just standing there fucking dumbfounded. Like, I'm like, did she really just fucking say I deserve the struggle if I don't understand what I'm doing? You know? So after that, it was just fucking, it was like survival at that point. I was just going through the motions of that fucking job. You know, I think there was one day where like you had to meet like a certain uh, goal, a certain money amount to get commission, and like the whole season I never hit that mark. And there was one day where I was determined to fucking hit it, just to fucking shove it in their faces. And the only reason I got it was because we had this item in the store that was like, God, I want to say like $600 or something like that, maybe more. I don't remember, but it was a lot. It was the most expensive item in the store, and I'm like selling all this stuff this day. I'm selling like tumblers left and right. I'm selling like fucking porcelain teacups. I didn't sell fucking cast iron to save my life, but I'm selling all this stuff. So like this couple comes in and they're looking for something for their son. They're like, "Hey, our son loves tea and everything. We're looking for something really easy for him to use in his dorm room." I'm just like, "Well, you can get a cast iron. It's this and this and this and this." No, not that. I go through the whole pattern. I take them to the porcelain. They don't want porcelain. Glass. I don't want glass. I take them to the cheap bastard section. They don't want that. I finally land on this most expensive item in the store, and what it was a self tea maker essentially. It lowered the tea into the water. It steeped it for you. It raised it out of the water. It poured it into the glass. Fucking walked your dog. It did fucking everything. You know. And they're like, "Oh wow, that sounds really easy." And they're like, "How much is it?" And I told them the price tag, and they're just like, "Ooh, that's a lot." I was like, "Okay, well, just give me a holler if you need something. I'm just gonna go help some other people." They're like, "Okay, that's fine." Half an hour goes by, and I still see these people like just standing at this fucking tea maker and shit. Half an hour goes by, I go over to them, and I was like, "So, did we find something?" And they're like, "No." And they're staring at this thing, and they finally just look at me, and they're just like, "Tell us about this again." I was like, "Oh shit, oh, okay, well, I mean, it lowers the tea into the water, it lifts it out of the water, it pours it in the glass, it walks your dog, it does, like fucking, I went full, like, Vince Valoof, like fucking slap chop and everything. It's the sham wow, like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I went into it, and after a second, they were just like, "All right, we'll take one." Beep, beep. I'm in the back already grabbing it. By the time they get to one, like, we'll take one. Meep, meep. I'm in the back and everything. And that was the sale that pushed me over my goal that day. I just started doing shit just to fucking smite them. I was like, I'm gonna hit the goals just to fucking smite them. Like if the barista's not around, I'm gonna make it to you just to show them I can fucking do it. And I did. Whenever I did sale, whenever I was on the cash register, just to be petty, I would fucking scan anybody else's name but mine. Even if it was somebody I helped, I would just do that shit intentionally just to piss them off. Because I'm a petty fuck like that. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a petty fuck like that. And I don't fuck, and it's a character flaw I have, and it's one I don't really plan on fucking working on. You know? I think one of the final straws, they sent me home early. And again, they use that same fucking thing. I was working, and I really just didn't give a fuck. Like I hated all the people there. They fucking hated me in return. So it was just like, you know what? They can't fire me because I didn't do anything really fucking wrong. And like I have to work with them. So finally one day I was supposed to close, and they're just like, "Oh, Will, could you go home early?" I was like, "Oh, fuck." And they're like, "And Sarah here is gonna give you a ride home." I'm like, "Awesome, Sarah, let's roll." So finally, Christmas Eve comes. Christmas Eve. Now, before I keep going with this story, I want you guys. I've worked 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 holiday jobs, and all of them last to end of January, beginning of February max. Once you get to beginning of February, that's it. You're fucking done with, because like you're clearancing shit for Christmas and everything. Once you get to beginning of February, you're pretty much done. That's max. Late January is minimum. So the schedule goes up for next week, and I'm not on it at all. But some of the other people that we've hired for the holiday season, they got at least like one day and shit like that. So I'm just like, okay, message received. So I was just like, hey, how come I'm not on the schedule? They're like, well, Will, it's Christmas Eve. The holiday's over. And I'm like, no, the holiday's not over till February. So I didn't say anything. I went home and shit. And finally, I think I called one day and I was just like, so I was just curious, am I on the schedule next week? And then that's when they told me, they're like, well, we don't think we'll be needing you anymore. I was like, okay, duly noted and shit like that. And that ended my time with Tivana, and it was just, overall, like, it was just not a pleasant experience. It was pleasant for about a fucking week, and then that was it. Like, no wonder this shit just went downhill. Maybe it was better before, like, they were bought by Starbucks, but unfortunately, I wasn't, around to see that. Maybe Jax has a different experience, but I remember Jax's experience not being as pleasant either. So I don't know, but we're not done here, because I also, worked when I moved to North Carolina with the baby mama, which, oh my god, this fucking shit. So when I was moving to North Carolina, there's so much to unpack with this, but I'm going to try and break this down as humanly slow as possible. So, when she fucking forced me into moving there, pretty much, I was like, how am I going to get to work every day without my car? Because I was saving to get my car there. And I couldn't get it there. So she was like, oh, well, my mom or dad will take you and everything like that. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So, but her mom only drove certain places. Like, her mom didn't know the highways that well. She was afraid of driving on highways, which I can understand, So, in the weeks leading up to me moving there, I'm like, hey, does your mom drive to Target? And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, what about to this place? Yeah. What about to this place? Yeah. Okay, cool. And then, like, one day, I think one of the places I said, I can't remember what it was, but I was just like, does she drive to this place? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, cool, I might apply there. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'm going to apply to work there, And she was like, oh, no, you can't work there. And I'm like, what? Why? She was like, oh, my mom won't drive there. And I was like, what do you mean she won't drive there? You said she'd drive there. She was like, oh, no, but not for your job. I'm like, what? So, like, 7 miles from where she lived, we had this chain grocery store. People on the East Coast probably heard of it, but it's called Food Lion. And she would drive the Food Lion like every day, pretty much. And she was like, "Oh no, you got to work at Food Line because she'll drive there every day." And I was just like, "So wait a minute. So let me ask you, hypothetically, I know these are not the right wages, but hypothetically, if Food Line is going to pay me $5 an hour and Target's going to pay me $10 an hour, I can't take the Target job?" And she was like, "Yeah, pretty much." And I was just fucking frozen. I was like, "Wow, okay, all right." Plus, she was like best friends with like one of the managers at Food Line. So I'm just like, okay. So I swallow that fucking bullet, because that could have been another argument that lasted like, I don't know, 3 days to about, I don't know, 8 months, one of the two. Um, so anyway, I get there, I put in the application, and they're like, all right, well, what department do you want to work in? And I'll be honest, I was trying to find the most bullshit fucking job there for me to do. And at the time, I thought it was produce, you know? So they're like, okay, produce. Hey, we'll have our produce manager interview you. I was like, awesome, sweet. So I'm sitting in the back, and the produce manager comes in. And to this day, he's a nice guy, but the interview that he gives me was kind of bullshit. So he comes in, he kind of describes what produce is all about. It's all about rotation, old to the front, new to the back, all this stuff, first in, first out, FIFO, if anybody's ever heard of that. And then he basically just sits there and tells me, he was like, okay, so I'll have you and two other guys and myself. So I just want you to know that, like, my two other guys, they've been here longer. You'll be new. So, like, their hours are going to come before yours. He was essentially telling me that he's going to fuck me on hours, essentially, you know? And I was just nodding, like, cool. Right on, because, fucking whatever. So I was like, okay, awesome. And he's like, all right, sounds good. Bye, leaves and everything. So, I fucking left, and like a few days go by, and I don't hear anything from Food Lion. And I tell the baby mama about the interview, and she was like, "Yeah, that doesn't sound good." And I was like, "I know, right?" So I was like, "You know what? I'll just call them and see if I could be a cashier." Like I don't want to be a fucking cashier in a grocery store, but fucking hey, money, money, So I call and speak to, the person that they knew there. And I was just like, hey, are you busy? She was like, no, what's up? And I was just like, hey, so I've been really thinking it over and everything. And like, I was wondering if like maybe I could just go ahead and just be a cashier. And she was like, well, I've actually been meaning to get in touch with you because I believe the interview you were given was not a fair one. So because of that, I'm just going to go ahead and hire you and I will let you be a cashier. I was like, oh, okay, cool, awesome. No problem, man. So we come in to do the paperwork and shit. And I was like, well, how much does this pay? And she was just at the time, she was like $8.25. I was like, okay, cool. And then she looked at me for a second. She was like, you know what? I'll give you $8.50. I was like, awesome, sweet. Spoiler alert: she never put in that $8.50. I was making $8.25 to the fucking day I left that place. No, I wait. That's not true. I think I did go up a little bit. Yeah, that's right. I did go up a little bit. I forgot. I lied. My bad. Um, Yeah, other than that, I really don't have any like fucking like continuous narratives like I do with Tivana here. So I will just tell you guys some some stories that happened there. And the first one is I actually caught the flu while living in North Carolina. A flu that almost fucking killed me. Like legitimately. I literally thought I was gonna die. And at the time, I didn't know it was the flu. I had no idea what the fuck it was. So I woke up one day and like just like I could barely move. Like that's how bad it was. I could barely move. And I take my temperature and it's like 100.4, So I had to go to work, so and they're like, "Oh, Will, you can't go to work like that." I'm like, I swear, my baby mama would find any excuse to get me out of fucking work, man. Like, fucking, it's right, there's a foot of sun outside, man. Like, that's how bad it was sometimes. So I'm just like, we have to work. I'm a fucking person supporting a family of three on a budget of one. Like, I have to go to work. I cannot miss a fucking day of work. So I go to work and, like, I am gone. So, like, I'm going through the commotion with the customer. Finally, I get a break. I go to the back and like I'm sitting there drinking a Diet Mountain Dew, And the baby mom was like, "You should go eat something." I was like, "I do not want to eat anything right now. I just want a soda." You know. So finally, they're like, "Hey, Will, can you go get carts?" And I was just like, "Yeah, give me just a minute though." And they're like, "Why? What's wrong?" And I was like, "Ah, I woke up with a 100-degree fever and everything, so I'm just kind of lagging in here a little bit." And they kind of look at me for a second, and they're just like, "Okay," you know. So I turn off my light. I go outside and get carts. I come back in. I turn the light back on. Two customers later, man, they come over and turn my light off. They're like, "Will, you can," they were nice about it. They're like, "Will, you can go ahead and go home." I was like, "Did I do something wrong?" Because this is like, I think, God, the kid was just born, so I'm like fucking 2 weeks into the job, you know? And they're like, "Well, you can go home." I was like, "What? Are you sure? Did I do something wrong?" They're like, "Well, we really can't have you working here with a 100-degree fever. It's a safety hazard." I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, understood." So that was like one of the rare good things they ever fucking did for me, was like actually look out for me. But that was like fucking one out of like 1,000, you know? Because like one, oh god, this one made no fucking sense to me, and hopefully like the people listening to this will understand it. But I had this like St. Louis Cardinals jersey, and when I would go outside and get carts in the summer. Now, here's a little fucking science with artists here. If you're wearing dark colors in the sun is going to be more attracted to those colors. It's going to make you warmer. It's going to make you hotter. It's going to make you sweat more. Whereas if you're wearing lighter colors like white or beige or something like that, the sun is going to be more, reflective of those colors and make you, I'm not going to say it's going to keep you cool, but it's going to keep you cooler than the fucking dark colors. This is my point. Okay? So, when I would go outside and get carts during the summertime, I would put on my St. Louis Cardinal jersey, go outside and get carts, keep me a little fucking protected from the sun. One day I put the jersey on, and she's like, and my boss is just like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, my jersey." And she was like, "And why are you putting that on?" I was like, "To go outside and get carts." And she was like, "Well, you can't wear that." I was like, "Why not?" And she was like, "Because you have to wear official Food Line gear to go outside and get carts." I was like, "I'm just wearing it to protect me from the sun, though." She was like, "Yeah, I can't. Yeah, we can't allow that." So I was like, "Let me get this right, though. I can't wear something to protect me from the heat, but in the wintertime, I'm allowed to wear something to protect me from the cold." Because to me, that makes sense, because we didn't have Food Line jackets. So by that fucking logic, when it came wintertime, no one was allowed to wear a jacket outside unless it had a Food Line logo on it. Which, spoiler alert, nobody did. you know? So I fucking didn't get it. Became a fucking big thing. Like, everything became a fucking big thing, because I'm just like, your logic makes no sense. And it could just be me, like, I don't know, maybe it was me. Maybe it was just me making a mountain out of a molehill here, but, like, still, that little thing, I'm just like, I'm sorry, I don't see the logic in that. Like, you're telling me I can't wear this outside because it doesn't have a Food Line logo, but in the wintertime, we can wear jackets that don't have a Food Line logo. It just didn't make any fucking sense to me. Um, you know, one of there's certain terms that fucking trigger me. Um, One of which is, you act like a child, or you think like a child, or grow up, shit like that, or act like an adult, something like that. That kind of triggers me and shit, because I have a different view or opinion of you and shit. And there's another phrase that fucking triggers me too, um, and I'm about to tell you what it is, because when I was training to be a cashier at fucking the illustrious fucking Food Line, they were like, "Okay, well, this and this, if they're short any money, don't go on to the next customer. If they have to run outside and get it, just wait for them to come back and da da da, all this shit." I was like, "Right on, cool." And I take all this, I write down like just about everything when I'm training for a job. Like, if it's shit that like I'm probably gonna forget later, I more than likely bring a notebook and start writing shit down. You know, Hence why I have so many notebooks for like podcasts and shit like that, so I can write down shit. You know. So this customer came in and they were like a dime short, and they were just like, "Okay, I'll be right back." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I'm sitting there waiting. Customer comes up. I was like, "I'm gonna beat you in just a moment. I'm just waiting for this customer to come back and everything." And they're like, "Okay, that's what," customer was fine with it. So they went to another line and shit. And finally, like, it's taking longer than expected, you know, like, oh, fuck, what's going on here, you know? Finally, like, one of the managers was just like, Will, just take a customer. I was just like, well, I can't because I'm waiting for this. Will, use common sense. And I was just like, okay, all right, listen, fuckface. All right, like, I'm doing what I was fucking trained to do. Like, you're not going to sit there and tell me to use fucking common sense, you know, for fucking something like I was told to fucking do. You know, like that shit, man, that cut off my fucking, like, like I used to get along with that person, and then that was it for that. Um, you know, we had a couple crazy customers. One lost it on me one time because, oh my god. So, you know, working at a grocery store, you're gonna get your coupon people and shit. And so this guy comes in one night, and he always had coupons and everything, so I didn't think anything about it. So he comes in, I scan all of his stuff, and, you know, in a Food Line, it wasn't like Hy-Vee, where I've told you guys about courtesy and everything. You bagged your own shit. So, like, while you're scanning it, you're bagging it and everything. So, like, I'm scanning his shit, bagging it, and at the end, he hands me 2 coupons. 2. So I scan them, beep, beep, and I was like, all right, your total's this. And he's like, what about the rest of them? I thought he was joking with me. I was like, aha, you know, that's good. And he's like, what about the rest of them? And I was like, haha, that's a good one. You know? And he's like, I asked you a question. I was like, what the fuck? Like, he fucking started screaming at me. You know? He's like, I asked you a question. I was like, that's when I lost it. I was just like, you gave me 2 coupons. He's like, no, I didn't. I gave you 4. I was like, you gave me 2. You gave me this one and this one. You know? He's like, I gave you a coupon for this pork right here. I was like, I don't have a coupon for pork. Well, I want to see your manager. Absolutely. So manager came over and looked through my coupon bag and even told him, I don't have a coupon for pork. You know? He's like, well, this is ridiculous, man. I'm going to pay for it. And he paid for it and everything. Then he walks over to the manager's door and knocks on it. Manager wasn't even fucking there. You know? Here's a fun fact. Here's the PS of that story, I should say. So later on, I'm like, you know, cleaning up around my register and everything for the end of the night and everything. And right in front of the register, there's a coupon for pork. He dropped it in front of the register and then tried to blame me for not scanning it. You know? Some fucking bullshit. And now, again, I mentioned to you guys, you know, here in Iowa, Hy-Vee, we have courtesy. You know, they load your cart and everything like that. I used to have this woman who would come through my line. I bagged the groceries, scan all of her stuff and everything. And, like, at the end, she would just tap her hand on her cart and be like, load my cart. And I'm like, I only have, like, a line full of people I have to attend to. You know? That, I wouldn't say it got me in trouble. But, like, the big boss, not just the floor manager, but the big boss came to me one day. Apparently, she must have complained about it. You know? Well, I did make a scene about it because, like, she made me load her cart one day and I went to the next customer. I was like, sorry for your wait. So that could be why I got in trouble. But, again, I didn't really get in trouble. But anyway, the big boss comes to me and he's like, so, Will, explain your checkout process. I was like, okay. I scan the groceries. I bag them. I put them at the end of the counter. Scan the MVP card, which is like the rewards card. And... you know, I mean, do you want to play-by-play? He's like, yeah, what else do you do? I was like, okay, they scan their card or I take their cash and give them their receipt. And he's like, and then what do you do? And I was just like, have a good day. Next. And he's just like, are you forgetting something? I'm like, no, have a good day. Next. He's like, load the cart, Will. You know, it'd be a nice thing if you load the cart. Like, he was real nice about it. Like, he wasn't like, hey, we got to complain about this and that, you know. He was just like, it'd be a nice thing if you load the cart for people. You know, it'd be like a helpful little thing. And I was like, oh, okay, I gotcha. It's just that sometimes I have a line full. I knew what he was referring to, but I didn't say it, you know. But I was like, sometimes I have a line full of people and I can't load every cart that comes through. He was like, no, I understand that. That's fine. He was real nice about it and shit. He was actually a very, very nice manager we had and everything. But, like, just that situation right there, I was just like, There was a day where I finally sat, because there was times where, you know, since I couldn't work anywhere else, you know, I could only work at fucking Food Lion, that, like, I'm just like, if I get fired, then, like, I can't live here anymore because fucking, you know, I can't work anywhere else. So fucking, I'm just gonna have to leave, you know? And I didn't want to do that, you know? But, like, if it happened, so be it. So there were a couple times I was trying to self-sabotage myself, you know? And I wouldn't say this was one of those moments, but I thought this was the time I got myself fired. We had this manager, and we had a rule with carts, all right? And that is we went order. So if, like, somebody's on register 3 and somebody's on 5 and then 6 and then 7, like, if that's how the register was set up, we start on register 3, that person goes outside and gets carts, then 5, then 6, then 7, and we repeat the process. That's how we did it. Okay? So this manager just, for some reason, I honestly don't even remember the fucking logistics of, like, why I fucking snapped finally. But, like, I remember, I think I remember what finally put me over the top was that, like, she didn't go in order of the fucking cart system we were doing. Like, I think it was supposed to be somebody else, and then finally she went to me again, and I fucking lost it, because she was doing other shit, too. And I honestly don't remember, you know, because, like, a lot of that shit I blocked out. But, like, I remember just fucking snapping. You know, I was like, I am tired of you and all this bullshit, you know, like fucking this and that, da, 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 and just fucking lost it and I turned off my light and went outside and got carts, you know? Like, I don't remember verbatim what I said. That tells you, like, you know, like I said, I blocked out most of this. I just remember fucking snapping, you know? Thinking like, all right, I just got myself fired, you know? Turns out it wasn't the case. You know, they just wanted to sit down and talk to me. You know, which that was a waste of fucking time, because whenever I tried to sit there and defend myself, they were just like, well, Will, you know, we're not here for that. And I'm like, that's exactly what we're here for. You know? So, yeah. Two more things I'll mention here. Oh yeah, okay, I can't believe I forgot this. Holy shit. So, one day, it's almost time for me to go. And I turn around to my boss behind me. And I said, hey, is there anything else you need from me? And she says, no, Will, you're good to go. I said, okay. So I'm about to close up, and a customer walks up. And she was like, are you open? I was like, no, ma'am, I'm not. The next lane's open. And she got fucking so offended that I would not take her in my line because I was closing. You know, well, fine. If I won't go to his line, then this is bullshit. How come he can't take me? I'm like, all right, whatever. So I'm about to clock out, and another manager was just like, Will, could you go ahead and hop back on real quick until the lines die down? Sure, no problem, you know? So I get back on, and that lady sees that, and oh my God. If you thought I offended her before, she was even more offended this time. Because, oh, look at him now on the register, just kept running her mouth behind me. She's in the next lane behind me. Just kept running her mouth. Oh, yeah, he can't help me, but now he can hop on and do shit. Da, 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 da. Just kept going and going. And it took every fucking ounce of my being not to just turn around and say something. You know, like, it was probably one of the most self-controlled moments I ever had in my fucking life. You know, like, just, oh my God, she just kept going. So finally, we leave at the same time. I clock out and I walk outside. So I call the baby mama. And I'm on the phone with her outside, you know, the store. And I was like, you're not going to believe what just happened. She was like, what? And I tell her what happened. Lo and behold, those people are like in the distance. And they hear me talking about it. And they're like, are you talking about us? And I just look at them and I look back at my phone. You know? So they walk over to me, and now baby mama hears them screaming at me, you know, on the phone and shit, like, you know, you're the one that didn't want to check us out, da-da-da, you know, all this stuff and everything. So I'm wearing my shirt, my name tag and everything. So they're like, what's your name? And they like bend their neck in a way. So like they make sure I knew that they were looking at my name tag. They're like, what's your name? William? Okay. So they run inside the store and tell the manager and everything. And I wait a little bit. I get off the phone with the baby mama. I go back in. I was like, I walked in and I told them, I was like, listen, just before I go, I just want y'all to know that, like, I was just on the phone, you know? And they're like, well, technically, Will, you were off the clock and on your time. We technically don't have anything to do with that. You're in the clear. I was just like, okay, I just wanted to be sure, and I left and shit. And the final thing I want to mention about a Food Line here was, I will say, the second nice thing they did for me was when I quit. I was, me and the baby mama, we broke up and everything. I was supposed to work the next day. Obviously, I wasn't going to work. I called them and I got the big boss, not the floor manager, I got the big boss. And I was just like, hey, and he was like, hey, Will, what's up? And I was just like, hey, so I'm supposed to be in at 1 today? And he's like, yeah. And I was just like, I'm actually not going to be in today. And he was like, oh, okay, that's okay. And I was just like, or ever again. And then there was like a silence, and he was just like, okay, is it something we did? Or I was like, no, it's not you guys, just some personal problems going on, and just, I'm just not going to be able to work there anymore. And he was like, okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope everything turns out for you and everything. I had to call about 3 weeks later because I had to get in touch with payroll to give them like my forwarding address and everything. And apparently there had to be another way to do it, but I heard the big boss in the background. So like, because I called the floor manager and I was just like, hey, I need to get a hold of payroll, for my forwarding address and everything. And I could tell that she was about to be like, well, Will, you got it. And then I heard her stop, and I hear like the big guy in the background just like, and she's like, oh, okay, all right, well, here's the thing right here. Like he went ahead and gave me whatever information that I needed because he knew it was me and knew fucking whatever I was going through. Because like word got around quick what happened in that store and shit, to the point where like they couldn't shop there anymore. That's how it got there and everything. But like overall, like working at Food Line was just fucking awful experience. Because like maybe it was a mixture of just the job and like awful home life as well. Because like how bad it is waking up for something that you fucking hate. Like I just fucking hated going to that place every fucking day and everything. It was just it was awful. And plus I hated working the morning shifts. And plus, whenever other jobs I've had where I'm just like, hey, can you work for me Saturday? And they're like, yeah, sure, Will, I got you Saturday. As long as somebody showed up, it was never an issue. But here, I would get people to work for my days and everything, and they're like, well, Will, you can't do that. You have to show up Saturday. Da-da-da. I'm like, what the fuck, man? There's somebody here. I finally lost it one day. Here, I'll leave you with this story. This is good. So one of the managers was a little snitch. We knew that, like, if we said or did anything in front of this manager, it would get back to the floor manager. So one day I was like, all right, I'm going to play the odds on this one. So I wanted this Saturday off. And plus, my mental health was not good at the time and shit like that. So I'm still friends with this cat this day, but I asked this guy, Isaiah. I was like, Isaiah, would you mind working for me Saturday? He was like, what time you work? I was like, 8 to 2. And he was like, yeah, William, I got you, man. You all right and everything. He's cool. My Jigga William is what he used to say. I was like, thanks, man. I appreciate it. So I left a note on the schedule saying, Isaiah will work for Will this time and everything. Da-da-da. I came in the next day and the note was gone. So I just went, I was like, oh, my note's gone. Is it okay that Isaiah works for me? They're like, no, Will, that's not okay. And I was like, what? I didn't say anything. So I was like, all right. I know the snitches here tonight, so I know what I'm gonna fucking do. Because this plan worked so fucking well. I'm so proud of myself of how well this fucking plan worked out. It's not even funny, So the snitch manager comes up at one point, and I was just like, hey, and she was like, yeah. I was like, hey, do we have a human resource number? And she kind of looked at me like, why is he asking that? And she nodded her head like, yeah. I was like, later on when you're not busy, can you get me that number for me? And she was like, yeah, well, I can get that for you. I was like, thanks, appreciate it. And I went back to work, And I just sat back and fucking waited. If I could put my legs up on a table and fucking put my hands behind my back, I would have did that. Because it was just a matter of fucking time now. And lo and behold, about an hour later, floor manager calls me into her office, And she was like, so, Will, what's the deal with Saturday? And I kind of like just threw all my fucking problems on the table and everything, And And I told her, I was like, I don't get why it's a big deal for somebody else to work for me. I mean, I understand this is a different company, but like, I have somebody fill in the space. Like, what's the problem here? And and she was like, it's okay, Will. You know what? Take Saturday off. Take it off. But I know it was only because I mentioned to like the manager snitch, like, hey, do we have a human resource number? Yeah. Can you get me that number later? Yeah, sure. Will. And I knew it. All I had to do was sit back and wait. It was a level 100 move on my part. Anyway, those are the stories you didn't ask for this week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Next week, I don't have a single clue what I'm doing, if anything. So, yeah, thank you guys for listening. I am the Artist Version 1, and remember, be breezy.